to revive and refresh the 9/11 memories. We've also got this character, Assad, the FBI entrapment specialist, who was put on ABC News in particular last night. So Assad says that he is the guy who entrapped the poor, mentally retarded 7 Haitians in the Miami warehouse. He talked to them in glowing terms about bin Laden, made them pledge allegiance to Obama, gave them to Osama. He gave them money, thousands of dollars of money was distributed. And then a significant number, I think 3 or 4 of these poor, mentally retarded Haitian men, none of them Muslim, as far as I can see, were then convicted right after 2 or 3 attempts to complete the frame-up. The FBI finally wrapped that up, and he also says that he came into contact with Mohammed Atta, right, the alleged pilot of the first plane hitting the North Tower. Of course, he couldn't have been the pilot because he didn't know how to do that. But the story from Assad, the FBI provocateur and entrapment specialist, was that he came into contact with Atta, and he asked, couldn't I please go after this guy? And they said, no, leave him alone. Yes, of course, because they needed Atta. Atta had a greater destiny. His destiny was that you couldn't put Atta in jail for September 11th, because then you couldn't manufacture the fantastic story that he had flown this plane. That would have been the one way that he couldn't have been flying the plane, is if he'd been sitting in a jail cell 1,000 miles away. So all of this stuff going on. Now, thanks to Charlie Sheen, the voice of the truth movement is heard. We also congratulate the people at the CAN group in New York City. They seem to have gotten a second wind, second lease on life in their attempt to put a 9/11 investigation on the New York City ballot, although there are still lots and lots of hyper-technical hurdles ahead of them in that famous hyper-technical New York state election environment, where all kinds of propositions and referenda are routinely thrown off the ballot because of the tiniest little pecoraro formalisms, as they were called back in 1986. So this is going on. But now, what should happen here? Let us look back. The division between the anti-war movement and the 9/11 truth movement was always a very artificial division, which was imposed by the foundation-funded, corrupt, left-liberal leaders of the peace movement and the anti-war movement. They were hysterical that they wanted 9/11 avoided. They didn't want to say a word about 9/11. Because, of course, they'd been told by their foundation controllers, if you entertain 9/11, you will lose your funding. And that has been, we've actually heard that from various of these peace fakers going on. So you had all kinds of so-called peace activists who wanted to protest against the Bush-Cheney wars, but they were not willing to attack the reason given, the premise given, the justification given by the Bush-Cheney regime for these wars. And indeed, 9/11 was, of course, the basis for the entire Bush-Cheney regime for the entire first term and well into the second term, maybe up until about 2006, when the Alex Jones Los Angeles conference being broadcast on C-SPAN tended to temporarily break the back of the hysteria that Bush and Cheney had created. You'll remember that Karl Rove had proposed to run the 2006 elections in the same way that he'd done 2002 and 2004, that is, on the basis of 9/11 hysteria, that the Republicans were the party of 9/11 awareness. So all of that has now happened. But again, let's use the next segment to talk about what's the organizing perspective now. How do you revive anti-war and 9/11 together at the same time? Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. The division, therefore, between 9/11 Truth and the peace movement, anti-war movement, was always a crippling flaw. It was a division which made the peace movement impotent because it meant that they could not challenge the reasons, the justifications offered by the Bush regime for everything that they did. Remember, the Bush regime once asked, why are you cutting health and education? And they said, well, after 9/11, we've got to fight the global war on terror, don't we? So this became a universal reactionary alibi for the Bush regime. Now, however, what's the situation? Now that you've got Obama in office, as we've been noting in the past month or so here on this program, you've got a situation where the peace movement, the anti-war movement, refuses to demonstrate for peace because it would be an embarrassment to their darling Obama. And this extends to the peace fakers at Code Pink, Peace and Justice, Peace Action, and so forth. And the litmus test was who supported Cindy Sheehan going to Martha's Vineyard to protest Obama in the same way that she had protested Bush in Crawford, Texas 4 years previously. And the honor roll is short. It's the Iraqi Veterans Against the War, it's Veterans for Peace, and a very few others. Local activists from New England. Act Independent certainly gets prominent place on the list for supporting this. And I've been glad to support it myself. So therefore, we have a situation where the peace movement has essentially gone AWOL, and what you've got left is the people doing the main part of the work of the peace movement are people left over from 9/11 Truth. Now, I would say the imperative is this. We've got General McChrystal, the hand-picked war criminal that is now running the show in Afghanistan. You remember he's the guy who set up the torture chambers in Iraq. And indeed invented al-Qaeda in Iraq, and probably invented this guy Zarqawi, who's now no longer with us. McChrystal is going to deliver a report in the next week or 10 days in which he's going to ask for more escalation. In other words, there's already an escalation, 20,000 under Obama. McChrystal will ask for anything from 20,000 more up to a doubling. It depends on how weak he thinks Obama is. He'll demand the most that he thinks he can get, and Obama will be in bad shape. There's an ugly mood about this in the House of Representatives. Some of these fakers like Pelosi realize that given their multiple betrayals on all other issues, including this one, they're going to have a very hard time getting more support for an Afghan escalation. Pelosi said yesterday that support for the Afghan war is waning in the House Democratic caucus, so that's the overall tendency. Therefore, the imperative is to revive 9/11 Truth in the spirit of Charlie Sheen, to revive the peace movement, anti-war movement, following the line suggested by Cindy Sheehan, which is to attack Obama. She came out with a very good paper, which we read your parts of a couple of weeks ago, saying Obama's speech in Phoenix at the end of August was absolutely channeling Bush and Cheney. It was a warmonger tirade. It was a bellicose, blustering speech saying we're going to conquer Afghanistan because if we don't, there will be a new 9/11. So let us now learn the lesson, given the fact that Cindy Sheehan has supported 9/11 Truth increasingly and is now in full support of it. This opens the idea of having a new campaign, a new left flank against Obama, the anti-war flank, in which the 9/11 people would join with the peace activists and actually attack the premise, because Obama is still using the same premise. This is the one area of his demagogy where the 9/11 myth still bulks large. So therefore, if you want to argue, get out of Afghanistan, it takes you back immediately to 9/11. So I think a certain revival of interest in 9/11 is certainly in the cards, and it's desirable because it adds to the effectiveness of whatever can be done to organize these demonstrations. I would again repeat, holding demonstrations in Washington on weekdays is not serious. And the people who have set this up for the 5th and 6th of October should really ask themselves, fine, do that on the 5th and 6th of October since that is now practically at hand. But then we've got to have something on a Saturday in Lafayette Park across from the White House that will challenge Obama directly because he's now the top warmonger. It's also interesting, Obama at the time of 9/11, of course, embraced the CIA blowback theory of 9/11. Blowback, of course, is the thing that you hear from somebody like Ward Churchill or Jeremiah Wright, and it means, you're an imperialist, so therefore they come after you, right? You're a little Eichmann. You bomb them, they bomb you. That 9/11 is the just punishment and retaliation from the suffering third world people for the crimes of U.S. imperialism. Well, that's an interesting story, but that's not how it happened. It's rather the retaliation of the CIA, the DIA, the NSA, the Pentagon, and so forth. That is the story of 9/11. That's where it comes from, through 25-plus drills on the day of. And look in my own book, 9/11 Synthetic Terror, and also look in the various editions of Zero, the book, published in Europe, and you can get a lowdown on that, particularly in the Italian edition. And I think some other editions are forthcoming or will be. The Zero movie continues to attract attention. It was just shown here in Washington last night for the 8th anniversary. So revive 9/11, revive the peace movement, but not separate, merged. And remember, the 9/11 truth movement was always the brain of the peace movement. It was the peace movement with a brain was called 9/11 truth because it